Hello, welcome to Talkin Kop. It is the LFC Women's Show. We're back. We haven't done one of these for ages. I'm your host, Chris Brackett. I'm joined by Neil Atkinson of the Anfield Rab and Emma Sanders. How are we both doing? I feel like we've not seen each other for ages.
Very well
Yeah,
indeed.
I love that music. It gets me pumped every time.
Yeah, that's what it is. That's one of Gav's specials, that one. Cool. So, I think last time we did was near the beginning of the season. It was all optimism and, can we get similar to what we did last year or being around what we did last year? But Emma, it's probably not matched probably the expectations that most a big chunk of the fan base had. I think we were all hoping it'd be a bit more. The small squad has probably took its toll a little bit, and we'll come into the manager situation after that. But what's your initial feelings been on the season so far?
It's been disappointing, yeah, definitely, and less so about the league position and the points, because as I said at the start of the season, I felt expectation would raise, but the standard of the league would raise as well. So I wasn't really too concerned about the league position. I think where we are is fine. What has been disappointing for me is the performances and also the games where Liverpool have dropped points. So Crystal Palace at home, bottom of the table side, drawing 1-1 with them. That's 2 points dropped. Losing to Leicester, a side who basically can't score a goal. Losing to them, that's again cheap points dropped. The loss against Everton at Goodison, when they were playing really poorly at the time, it's those results and those performances for me that has made it a disappointing season.
I suppose, Neil, the other thing that's also been a disappointment is Liverpool last year, especially at home, made it a difficult place to play for the bigger sides. Chelsea didn't like coming to us. We took points of Chelsea, we took points of City, we did double over Man United. You can't say you expected it, but we made it difficult for them, and it hasn't always been the case, especially in the away games. It has been a little bit too easy to get past Liverpool.
I think that's definitely the case, but I think this is part of building a successful season, building on a successful season when some of that success has come in the games that you least expect it. I think that's a more difficult thing to do than is given credit for, because ultimately where you end up is you're asked to repeat valiant rearguard actions much of the time, where one bounce of the ball goes against you this time, and the result can be very, very different. And I think that if anything, Liverpool almost needs to build this season, the home form especially, on, as Emma says, just picking up the points that they need to pick up, and almost therefore let that other stuff take care of itself. And also that builds, you get the way it worked last season was you end up with a little bit of a virtuous circle. Part of the reason why everyone's convinced the plan's going to work is because the plan worked last time. Whereas if you fall into the habit of the plan's not working, and the same things happen, or there's some setback or some adversity, or even just a passage of play goes against you that you don't expect, then you get yourself into a little bit of a bother where everyone's not quite as convinced that this is going to continue to come together. And, I think you almost can't talk about all of this without talking about the managerial shift, because a lot of this isn't to even particularly say that that Matt Beard became a bad manager. It's that what begins to happen is you've got your plan, you've got your approach. Everyone's got to believe in that plan or approach, or you need a whole new set of players, which is unfeasible. Or what you need to therefore do is say, right, well, we need to shift the plan and approach because we now feel as though that isn't going to work. And that's why I feel an unbelievable amount of sympathy actually for Matt in a number of ways. One of the things that happens is that last season he raises the bar in these exceptional matches. And also within there as well, doesn't perhaps see any sort of budgetary uplift. That said, there is a limitation on the longevity of the style of play in the context of you can't, even if you were to get better players, even if you were to have improved almost every member of the starting 11, hypothetically, you couldn't then still feel as though, well, we'll go and get a result at Chelsea, we'll go and get a result at Arsenal, playing exactly the same way, because the way that goes is that it is just fraught with that element of risk that things can go a little bit wrong. So, it is this, football's very rarely, especially these days, it's very rarely that the answer is one sentence. That's all very, very neat. But I think where Liverpool have ended up with the campaign has been that there's clearly a desire for there to be a little bit more attacking talent on the pitch, a little bit more attacking talent being brought in. But all of that, therefore, needs those players to both the existing ones and the new ones to believe in what the plan is going to be week in, week out, and ultimately results are what convinces or doesn't convince football supporters and football players. And then on top of that, therefore, it has been a poor inconsistent season at home. It hasn't felt quite right all the way through. I think that it's good that there's been some change, I'd say. And you're able to say that without in any way, shape or form really genuinely sort of criticising the man who left.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Because listen, it's not sort of the way us three do things. It's not the way I do the podcast. It's not about bashing the manager, because actually what people need to remember is this is the manager who's brought Liverpool to two WSL titles in his first stint, and his second stint he got us out the Championship, which, let's be honest, we never looked like we were doing before him. We were all at Bristol away. It's still one of my favourite Liverpool games, one of my favourite away days. It was great fun, and this is probably the first year where you probably felt it's a little bit of a backward step under him. But to be fair, you can understand some of the criticism. We kind of split Liverpool into a few areas. We could talk about investment and the injuries, and we will come into that. But if we just purely talk about the tactical setup of Liverpool, I think Neil's right. It's fine playing a defensive 5-3-2 if it works against your results. It's not easy on the eye, but if it works, it works. But I think the problem that it felt this year was we weren't scoring goals, and we still felt quite easy to get in against, no matter who we played. And I think that's where you could understand frustrations around the tactical setup, as in like, well, this isn't working. So do we not just go a bit more adventurous, because we're not really getting much results being this deep and defensive? So we may as well try something different.
Yeah, but I think it's the classic human response to football. When it's a certain style, which Matt Beard's has always been, it's hard to break down. It's more methodical. It's scrappy. That's the whole element of the style, is that it's scrappy, which is uncomfortable for the opposition. It's all about making the opposition uncomfortable, and then it's almost playing towards individual strengths, as opposed to when you're in possession, as opposed to maybe building play from the back, for example, as like an Arsenal or a Manchester City typically. Their style throughout the club is about that. So that style of football, when you're not getting results, is really, really difficult to be on board with. And that's just human nature, because you're watching a team play scrappy football, and when it doesn't come off and you haven't got results, then it's just not as nice on the eye. And like, that's a very simplistic view of football, but I do think that is just a human nature response to watching it. So when Neil was talking before about when the results weren't going your way against teams that you're expected to beat or expected to get points off, then absolutely that will have a knock-on effect, because players are then thinking, hang on, we're meant to be tough to beat, we're meant to make it hard for opposition, and we're giving away cheap points here, and it's happening again and again and again. And suddenly you're then not buying into the style of play, which is completely based on, players essentially really digging in. And it's all about heart. A lot of his style came from, that kind of, mental toughness, mental scrappiness, and that hard work off the ball. When you've not got that buy-in from players, when you've not got the buy-in from support, therefore you haven't got like that extra additional push in, the last 10 minutes of games. I remember this season being in stadiums when Liverpool were sort of 1-0 or 2-0 down, and genuinely thinking they're not getting back in this game. Last season, I remember being in that position and thinking they could get back in this game. And that for me is a simplistic way of summing up the season. I felt the belief was just gone from the fan base, from the players. And I think Matt Beard's departure was amicable, because I think he understood that. The energy and the mood just dropped, and that happens in football. It just wasn't there this season. The spark was lost, which was, a shame given all of the work that they'd done last year. But sometimes, change is good. Sometimes it freshens things up, and I just think Liverpool were in need of it.
Yeah, I mean, Neil, in terms of sort of the current squad setup, I think we spoke about this at the beginning of the season. It's exciting getting Olivia Smith, and listen, she has been extremely exciting. I mean, she's probably one of the most fouled people in WSL. Teams target her for a reason, because she's so good. But sort of feel like as a squad, we feel a little bit unbalanced, maybe short in a few areas. Some players who have left, I'm not going to name names, but you do sort of look going, probably didn't replace with similar quality, and perhaps put maybe too much onus on youngsters, or we've just let some areas of the squad just get a little bit past its prime.
Yeah, I think there was also a little thing where, let's be clear about this, I think in all football, wing backs is hard. I think I really feel as though I'm watching Liverpool women at times this season, and where they'd ended up with the wing back system was effectively central defenders being pressed into service to play right wing back. That is so different to the idea of central defenders being pressed into service to play right back. But it's also different, when I say it's difficult as a system, well, being a right-sided centre-back in a 3 is a markedly different job to just being a right-sided centre-back as part of a pure partnership of 2. There is a greater onus, especially if you're going to want to be playing progressive football, to do more of a job. And I feel as though, and again, this comes back to the complexities, really, the conversation around the previous manager. He had someone who I would still have argued last summer was arguably still too much of a defender to be a pure wing-back. But it's far better than where Liverpool ended up at times this season in terms of who had to play there, which was just not unfair. Which was just totally unfair on the players who ended up trying to fill in that role in particular. And it takes a really specific skill set to be able to play as a wing-back, because you've got to be able to be all things almost at any given moment. And especially then if you get into a situation where you're continually chasing games late on. And all the time the ball ends up being funneled out to wide areas. And then there's a massive issue about, well, what's the standard of your delivery like? What's your ability to beat someone who's closing you down, who really does not care because they're defending a lead where the football ends up. They're not trying to nick it off you and turn and go. They're quite happy it just goes out for a throw. They're quite happy just to do whatever it takes to shut you down. There's no other aim here. And I think that is, but this throws back into the idea, therefore, of, well, when it got to last summer, well, are we therefore investing in wing backs? Is that what we're going to do? And we're going to go wholeheartedly in, and we're going to go get the best one, at the very least, given the fact that someone moved on, the best one that we can, so that we solve that side, because we like the left wing back. She's a really good player, and she is. And she shows that on a regular basis in terms of Hinds. So what is it that we're doing? But then that never happens. So I just think that so many of these sorts of little bits and pieces of decisions, they move along those sorts of lines, and you can just end up in a situation where no one's quite sure what their job is in that sort of shape, especially when it isn't going well. Whereas, and listen, people can still not do the job well, and people can have complex tactical instructions they don't fulfill. But sort of broadly speaking, everyone in a 4-2-3-1, with maybe the exception of one of the midfielders, central midfielders, knows precisely what it is they're meant to be doing, at least in theory, at all times.
Yeah, and I'll just jump in on what Neil's saying there about specifically recruiting for positions. I think this is such a fascinating conversation in women's football, because a lot of the Premier League owned women's football clubs, Liverpool, for example, a lot of the recruitment is done in a completely different room to the women's setup. Now, Liverpool is slightly different because you've got the likes of Susan Black, Ross Fraser, who are purely based on the women's team. However, they're making decisions with people in a boardroom who are also across the men's game, and it's a buy-in by all of them. And the manager will absolutely have some form of say, but they're not really the ones who are leading on that recruitment. Now, every club has different recruitment models, but I find this really fascinating, because if you're at a club like Liverpool, where the manager wants to play with a back 3, they want to play with wing backs, then for me, the manager should be going into that boardroom and saying, my priorities this summer are X, Y, Z positions, and then the recruitment team taking that information and acting on it. But in the WSL, for example, a lot of clubs don't work that way. It's done the other way around. It's the recruitment team identifying talent, then presenting them with the actual coaching staff. So I find this whole conversation quite interesting, because I just wonder if, let's say we knew what Matt Beard's top 3, recruitment picks were. I'd love to know if two of the 3 of them were wing backs. That kind of insight would be really fascinating to know.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing I always thought with Liverpool, and I don't think this has been wise of the event. He did look at that midfield and thought, we look at least a player light. Going with four senior central midfielders and a youngster, a very talented youngster, but a youngster, felt like a risk when you only play with two, and though that two do a lot of work. It's the amount of run they have to do as a two is immense, And then unfortunately, you lose Sophie Lungard, second game of the season, ACL, season done, and then you could just see that pressure then, because it literally took within 2 games, Emma, and we were having to play centre backs and centre mid. So I mean, as Neil said, it's hard playing a centre back as a wing back, but they're asking centre backs who aren't, pace isn't part of their game. That's just the way you're built. To then go, can you go and do up and down centre mid? It just felt like, while we could have criticisms of how the manager maybe sometimes set things up, or that could be your take as a player, it did feel like he was not left with all the tools.
Yeah, and I find this is, for me, one of the toughest things in the WSL for those clubs that are above the relegation battles, but are comfortably below the top 4. So Liverpool obviously completely, defied the odds and broke that mold last season, getting into the top 4. But they massively, massively overachieved. We're aware of that. So where they should be in terms of their budget is between the kind of, the 9th and the 5th place positions in the table, right? So for those teams, it's really difficult to then have a large squad, because unless you're going to go on a very successful cup run, there's not much to play for. So it's really difficult then, when you've got a strong starting 11, to persuade players of similar quality to come and join your squad. And I think Liverpool have had this problem, and so you either take the risk, so you perhaps get squad players that just aren't as good as your starting 11, or you go down the line that I think Liverpool tried to do, which is only recruit, elite players, for example, Olivia Smith. So you use up a bulk of your budget on elite players, and therefore have a small squad and just hope that you don't get injuries. It went well for Liverpool last season. Everything sort of fell in place. This season it didn't. At the wrong times, the wrong players got injured. You start the season, you're looking to build some momentum, and, your starting striker is out. Sophie Lungard, one of your key midfielders that you've molded the team around, then does her ACL. So I don't think we can discuss the season without talking about those key injuries at the worst possible times. However, as a football club, Liverpool took that risk, and it didn't pay off.
Yeah, I mean, to speak some positives of the season, Olivia Smith has probably been the biggest positive.
No, the good thing about the Olivia Smith thing is that she's just so viscerally exciting, and her being around the place and being around the camp, I think, the idea that she's the very definition of a footballer that gets you off your seat. Whether you're watching at home, she drags the eye, drags the attention. You're watching at home, she gets in the ground, she picks it up, and straight away you're there, you're fully engaged. And that's an enormous positive. I think it's important for Liverpool to have 2 or 3 players like that, to be honest with you, players who really sort of capture your attention and capturing key moments. I think that's important. And then in an ideal world, hopefully being able to see a few of these players grow together in the fullness of time, especially if they're all around the age of Olivia Smith. I feel not dissimilarly at times around Mia Enderby as well. I think that there's something quite sort of exciting about her when she gets moving. I think you can sort of go, you can see that there's something really, really vibrant in there, really, really that grabs your attention. I think it's good that Liverpool have got that, and I think that Olivia Smith is an absolutely massive plus.
Yeah. The other big plus, Emma, I would say, has been, I think the 2 midfielders we brought in January, particularly Sam Kerr, who Liverpool were trying to sign before she went to Bayern Munich, when that's always a good year, she went to Bayern Munich. She's just given us that extra little bit of class, a little bit of quality. It's allowed us where the likes of a Hobbinger now and a Fuka Nagano can be rotated. We're not having to flog the same 3 all the time, which again, that's kind of what we wanted Lungard to do. But Sam Kerr has been, I think that's been mutually beneficial to both. She's getting minutes, which she needs, which she wasn't getting at Bayern, and we get a bit of extra quality in the midfield. She was excellent in the FA Cup games.
Yeah, I've been really pleased with her. I watched her debut and thought she was fantastic in that first game, and I think her second game was a little bit of a dip, but other than that, I think she's been very consistent in the games that she's played. So yeah, fantastic loan signing, and I'm pretty sure that the club will be looking to make that permanent in the summer. I'd be surprised if that doesn't happen. Obviously, she's been a long-term target, and I think that helps because you can see she's quite clearly a Liverpool player. She's a player that fits the way that they play, and it makes sense that she's been a long-term target. So, yeah, I thought that was a really good piece of business. And at the end of the day, they only had loan moves that they could do in January. And I think when you look at the three that they brought in, Julia Bartel, another really, really talented footballer from Chelsea, and then Alejandra Bernard, who's, not had any minutes yet, but another, young player who, in terms of adding to squad quality, when you can only really bring in loan players and young players, she's another talented one. So I think actually they did quite well in that January transfer window with what they had.
I mean, look at the dream world. You probably sign Sam Kerr an opponent, and you see if Chelsea would fancy give a Bartel a season to herself, because it's just a thing of we've all watched enough football. There's just certain things with someone like a Bartel where just the way she controls, or the way a body swerve goes, you just look at someone and go, that's just someone who's going to be a level above. You can just tell that there's something about the way she is that you go, like, that's an exciting prospect. And actually, that's one of those things where you hope that can be mutual beneficial for both. It gets her regular minutes, which helps Liverpool, and Chelsea ultimately get a very experienced player on their books, minutes in meaningful games. So that's kind of sort of the hope you're looking for. Unfortunately, there isn't always good news in the WSL at the moment, and unfortunately, Liverpool released a statement a couple of days ago now relating to Taylor Hinds, who was subjected to abuse at the Arsenal away game in the FA Cup. Liverpool moved swiftly with it. Very brave by Hinds to come out and highlight this. To be fair to Arsenal, the person was ejected straight away, and Arsenal came down this really seriously. But I don't know, maybe it's my age, but I kind of thought most of this nonsense would have disappeared by now. But unfortunately, this is something that is still around for women sports people.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I can comment on it first. As a woman, it absolutely exists 24/7. There's been no change. We're in 2025, and it was the same 25 years ago. That is the reality for women in football, not just players. It happens to referees, coaches, people in media. Myself, I've experienced it countless times. So, Taylor coming out and speaking about it, I think, is so admirable, and it's really, really important. And it was during the game where I think it was Lawsey that was nearby, and both players immediately told the referee what was going on. The referee acted very quickly. Arsenal stewards, as you've mentioned, were very, very good. Immediately addressed the issue, and I think Arsenal as a club, certainly from what Liverpool have said, I think both clubs have worked very, very well together to address it. But I think it needs people like Taylor to come out and call it out. I think it needs people in the stands to call it out, because for this to be happening, it's ridiculous, really. And to be honest, again, as a woman, I find it really exhausting speaking about it, because it's not us who can change these things. Sadly, it has to be the people that have got these views or feel like it's acceptable to shout about women's appearances while they're playing sport, while they're at work. It's unacceptable. They need to be the ones that listen. So for Taylor to put out that statement is really good, because she wants to make sure that this isn't happening for the future. But people need to listen. There's only so many times you can say it.
I think I'm fully supportive of everything that Emma's just said there. I think the most important thing, though, is that there shouldn't really be the attempt to change minds. I think there just needs to be consequences, and that's the end of the matter. And if you don't like the fact there's going to be consequences, then don't go. Yeah. And if you feel as though you are the sort of person, and I very much doubt I'm speaking to anyone here who's listening to this who is that sort of person, I want to be clear. But almost like Emma messaged me and said that there's a statement coming out, and I shared it straight away. And I think we got the Anfield wrap too as well. And the reason why the reason why isn't to, I'm trying the right word. The reason why is so people know that if you do this, there's going to be consequences. Because I think that the idea of it's not for if I know people who have overheard very, very bad things in football matches and end up getting caught up in it. People, who had standby in that scenario whose behaviour is spot on. But all of that said, it's not for, or shouldn't be for, the women who are exposed to this to have to then have the argument and then think that they've got the emotional labour of changing minds. Emma does not need to change minds. So the most important thing that everyone can know from it is, if you're going to do this, there's going to be these consequences. And that's the end of the matter, in a way. So you either choose not to go, don't do it. If you do go, know that what the consequences would be if you were to go down that route. Or alternatively, maybe think about changing your mind, but really that bit almost just doesn't matter anymore. And I think that the more that I'm very into the, if you don't like, a lot of the stuff that we do or have done for years, really, a lot of the time my sort of reaction to it is if you don't like it, don't listen to it. If you don't like it, if you don't like that we have women talking about football after matches, then don't listen. I'm not changing it, but also I don't really want you. Thanks, but I don't really want you. It's ludicrous. So I think that that almost just needs to become the wider thing here. Societally, we're not in a position to change minds. I think it's easier in certain circles and moments for men to be in a position to say, if someone said something that's unacceptable, and we should all men, including myself, try to do that more often, and sort of do it that way if you want to even think about the idea of engaging with changing minds. But I just think on the whole, the idea of it's just not acceptable is the best way to go about it, for the avoidance of doubt. It is that straightforward, and also remembering for everybody that what Emma also said there about workplaces, that's a big part of this as well. And it is just it's unacceptable in all ways, but it's also worth remembering the stress that you're putting people under. But it is as simple as, if you're going to do that, if you think that you're the sort of person who does that, don't go to almost anything, frankly, but certainly don't be going to women's football.
Yeah.
Well said. But that's not really good. You can't really do a good segue from that, to be honest. And I'm certainly not talented enough to do a segue.
But what I would say, I mean, on your agenda, I was quite surprised. That way around, we're going to mention the FA Cup semi-final, Chris.
Yeah.
Let's talk about, firstly, Arsenal's reaction to it being excellent, but also, if you want to talk about highs and lows of the season, you can make a really strong argument the second half of that game at Arsenal is the genuine high of the season. It's excellent from Liverpool women's point of view. They do, a fantastic job. They get themselves ahead. They fight with everything that they've got. They show Arsenal where they're blunt over that as well. And actually, the striking thing for me, last 20 minutes, the most excellent thing was actually the goalkeeper doesn't have that many miraculous moments that need to be pulled out of the hat, if any. Liverpool do a really good job of effectively creating, and this is why, if under Amber, Liverpool can be a little bit more progressive going forwards at certain times, they know they can rely on a lot of what they had on the mat. That when it comes to it, they can do that last 20 minutes and fight for their lives. The idea there was that they've got to get the one goal ahead, or ideally in a brilliant world two. And being able to marry both of those things is no bad thing. And I think that pperformance at Arsenal, genuinely, it is the season high point. It's brilliant in the FA Cup semi-final. It's such a shame it's away and not home.
Yeah. I was praying for a home tie. I didn't care who we got. I wanted a home tie.
Also, because it would just have been an enormous laugh for everyone. It would have been something that everyone could galvanise around and go to, and say it'd be great to get behind them. That context.
And I wouldn't have had to have travelled to London for work. So
there we are.
A personal, selfish view, but another huge highlight.
Another huge highlight that it would have been with a home draw. Yeah. That's the only shame, really. And I think that's something which it is a bit of a blow, and it does obviously throw open the fact that it isn't even a neutral venue, that Liverpool have got to go and do that. But I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to seeing them have a really good go. And just the idea of a cup final on the horizon is something that everyone can be really excited about. It is the high point of the season, which is it's why it's a shame it's marred now by this. But the flip side of it is, let's celebrate the high point and also the part that the captain plays in being part of Liverpool getting there at the high points as well. It was a brilliant defensive performance.
Yeah, I mean, Emma, it has been some trek this FA Cup. It's away at Rugby, was it away at West Ham, away at Arsenal, away at Chelsea. If they get to this final, that's doing it the hard way. Every round away from home, but that's probably, I'll be honest, the cup, and even to an extent, the home games in the League Cup have probably been the bit of light relief we've needed. It has felt a little bit almost like pressure off.
Yeah.
It's been like the nice distraction from the league of going, it's actually fun. The cup games have actually been the fun part of the season.
It's a distraction, but also for a club like Liverpool, which I kind of alluded to before in terms of their position in the table. When you're 7th in the WSL, you're safe from relegation. You're not anywhere near challenging the top 4. To have a good cup run is so important. It's what you're playing for. It's what you're playing for. And that's not to dismiss the other games. Look, they're professional footballers. They know what's at stake at those games. But as fans, the game against Arsenal was the biggest game of the season. The game against Chelsea now is the biggest game of the season. And if they get through that, then the cup final is the biggest game of the season.
Yeah.
They have to do well in the cups, because it has a knock-on effect on, when we were talking before about adding to squad depth and, being able to push those little margins to get closer to the top 4 consistently. You've got to have good cup runs. There has to be some form of tangible progress that's being made, that's not just a couple of points added onto a table or one position higher in the table. And cup competitions are such a good opportunity to do that. So it's been a real positive, and I 100% agree with Neil. Without a doubt, it's the highlight of the season for me. Nothing even comes close to it. And for Amber to get that so early on in her interim spell, in the space of a week, she's got a win in the WSL, a clean sheet, and then she then goes and gets, another clean sheet and a win against Arsenal in the FA Cup to reach the semi-finals. It's just really nice, isn't it? It's just really heartwarming, and I think everyone needed it.
Yeah, I was getting in trouble with family because we were out as a family get together, and basically, I'll be honest, we all sat down for a meal, and I just ignored everyone for the last 45 minutes. They were, what you do is, I'm watching the match. I can't take my eyes off this. so I was in the doghouse because I was being very antisocial with all of my family because I had to see the goal and had to watch the game. It was just transfixed, which was nice because sometimes when seasons are hard, it's easy sometimes just to switch off a little bit and go, I'll catch the highlights later. It was generally like I was transfixed by it. So, but let's stick with Amber Whiteley, who is the interim Liverpool manager. She has done it before after Vicky Jepson left, when we were between Vicky and Matt Beard. She's a fantastically highly rated coach. Do we feel, is this still going to be another interim role, or do we think she'll actually be given the opportunity to be the Liverpool manager and try and take Liverpool on from the good work Mac did?
I will not be surprised in the slightest if Amber Whiteley is permanent manager next season. I think she has everything that ticks the boxes. I actually wrote a piece on this recently. I would have loved to have gone into loads more detail about her tactics, but I asked her the question about playing with a back 4 in a press conference last week, and she gave a really interesting, insightful response about how they wanted to sort of make the most out of their attacking play, and she felt that through data and sort of insights and reviews that they've done over the last sort of 2 to 3 weeks, they basically saw trends that essentially the conclusion was playing with a back 4 with this set of players gave them the best chance of scoring goals. They've done that in 2 games and they've won both and they've scored goals. So that in itself I thought was really exciting. She's developed hugely since she was last interim. She's done some work with the Republic of Ireland recently that was something that was really supported by the club. So she's gone and got some good experience under Carla Ward, who has got tons and tons of WSL experience and is a manager that has a proven track record of getting the best out of players. So there's just a lot there that really excites me about Amber Whiteley. I know she was, in the kind of the conversation the last time that they, did a recruitment, and obviously Matt Beard got the job, but I know Amber was among that conversation. She's come out and boldly said, which I really, really admire, that she wants the job.
Yeah.
And if you can both remember in the last interim spell, I didn't feel she felt she was ready for the job. She never came across boldly. She didn't really say, I want the job. She came across as somebody who perhaps didn't know how good she was as a coach. In the 4 years since then, I think she's now got the experience to back up her talent, and she knows that now. And for her to come out and say, I'm ready for this, I want the job, I just think that's great. And, she ticks a hell of a lot of boxes for me. So I'd love to see her really audition for it over the next couple of weeks. Show us what you can do, put your name in the hat, and give it your best shot.
Yeah, I mean, Neil, I suppose from a club perspective, that's probably the ideal, isn't it? You know, promote from within. You know, you have a very, very talented coach, and this is the opportunity for her to take the club onto the next level. But that's the ideal. I mean, the benefit is she knows the ins and outs of the club. She knows the ins and outs of the players. She's very highly regarded tactically. I mean, hence why the Republic of Ireland have been using her. You know, that's how high regarded she is. You know, and I think supporters, that's something we could get behind. You know, almost like one of your own going, cool, let's go. You know, we'll see where it can take us.
And that's true. I think the flip side is what you don't want is someone who's institutionalized necessarily. And that'll be my one sort of wider concern. I think that it's important that ultimately the people who are running Liverpool Women are forced across either this summer or next, I'd say soon rather this, to be clear about what it is that they want and what it is that they want to try and do. And to, I think, put forward another sense of a blueprint that this is what we're trying to do. To be really clear, the last time that happened was around the period of the appointment of Matt Beard. And the idea was we want to get up and then we want to stabilise as a team in the top flight. And that's the aim. Which they've done. So I think that's really important. And then I think some limbo was then ensued off the back of that, and an opportunity with reference to the fourth place finish, I think, was missed. But that's all right if that's missed. And internally, people have gone, I think we've missed that, you know. All right, well, what we need is a plan that we're going to work to do the next thing. And the next thing should be the idea of Liverpool being in the position to challenge, not win, but challenge for trophies, and also position themselves as being able to have the opportunity to play European football at some point. And I think that would galvanise Liverpool Women full stop in a community sense in the city of Liverpool. If people began to see that, I think it would resonate. I think that Liverpool very much does see itself as a European club, and it gives everyone a story to tell, even if you're telling it in different places, because I think everyone's getting a bit smarter about how to do this, and that's not a bad thing either. So I think that's really, really important, and I think that that's what it's got to come with. So if it is Amber, what it can't be is, well, one of the reasons why it's good at Amber is, well, she knows how we do things. Well, maybe how we do things needs to change a little bit. Maybe it's got to be a little bit better, a little bit more focused, and a little bit more driven. And she can be part of that. She could also be a catalyst for that. She could lead that. And the idea of someone from the outside, why someone from the outside could potentially appeal, is that person could come in and go, well, we're not doing that. Or no, I need this type of player, this type of player, or this type of player. If not, you're wasting my time. And I think that is therefore a different offer. So I think it's important. It's important to be a critical friend. Ultimately, I think of Liverpool Women, and in the same way that it'll be important to be a critical friend if she gets the job of Amber, because the demand has to be, you're coming in, it's got to be better than what there was before. And I think you can already see certain steps in that. I think if you're not going to come, if you think there's a chance you're going to come 10th, 11th, or 12th in the Super League, then only having 2 players, maybe 3. At a push, when you see a first 11 who you'd call attackers or attackingly sort of offensively minded players on a team sheet, that's all right. But there's a thing that Liverpool Women should want to do, which is to get as many people as excited as possible to go and watch Liverpool Women, or watch Liverpool Women in the houses at every opportunity. And the way you do that is just simply with attacking football. And if you're not going to go down, then there's no reason not to play attacking football at every opportunity. And Liverpool Women, almost certainly, we're never going to get relegated this season. Almost certainly, they won't get relegated next season. If that changes, then you've got to change your approach, maybe. If there's a reason to panic, then panic like the best of them. But I think that's the most important thing. So already Amber's doing that. You can see it in the selections. You can see it in the approach. You can see it in patches even at Arsenal, where, yes, it ends up being a rearguard action, and that's fine, that's football. But the idea of being able to play progressive football through the thirds, all that sort of stuff, have movement, have runners, have people looking to pull people around, ask questions to the opposition. That's the most important thing. And in someone like Olivia Smith, who Liverpool Women will want to keep hold of, she can't be a lone flag carrier, not least because it's actively bad for her career at her young and tender age, that she ends up with too much onus put on her. There needs to be another couple of people who will take the fight to the opposition in a really clear way. So that's the job, and that's the job for Amber now. I think it's the job for the next phase of Liverpool Women. I think the idea of communicate, you don't have to explicitly write it all down and put it in front of us, but come out, communicate. There is a blueprint. these are the targets. It was really clear last time. It can be really clear this time, and then go from there. And the likely shifts, some of which are good, some of which are bad, in the way the women's game is going to operate across the next 3 or 4 years. Would support Liverpool women in that, whether me and Emma like it or not. It would support Liverpool women in that. Yeah. And so, ultimately, again, I think this shouldn't be happening, but the playing field is being tweaked to help Liverpool women. Mm-hmm. So this is the time now to go for it, whilst we all simultaneously acknowledge that there's other really good clubs with really good budgets who are doing the same thing. We need to say that the competition, the opposition exists, but I think that this is the time to do that and to sort of to see if we can grab another moment. I hope it is with Amber, but as I say, that's my one notion of, are we sure, is what we don't want is someone who's just really happy with Liverpool women's existing way of doing things.
You have to cast the net out wide, don't you? And that's essentially what I think you're getting at, Neil, isn't it? It's 100%. If you've got someone who's good at the job and they're within the company, that's a great bonus. But you have to cast the net out wide to make sure that whoever it is, that basically the blueprint that you want, that you get the right person to do it.
Yeah, but you've got to cast the net out wide. But what I would say is that I think if they decide the right person is Amber, it's important almost through that process to then empower Amber to say, we're not getting you in because you're internal and you know the way we already work. We're getting you in because we think you're the best person. But in the same way that we're going to test you, i.e., how good a coach are you? What can you do? You've got to test us and make demands of us. How good are you going to be at running this club, growing this club, and building it for the next phase of women's football? And I think that you've got to, it's not enough to get someone in who you think is going to do a pretty good job on the training pitch, is what I'm saying. I think you need someone who can also work internally and make requests/demands of Liverpool. And if a reason to pick Amber is you don't think she's going to do that, then that you're the wrong person and they're the wrong criteria to be measuring this on.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, well said. So, Emma, obviously, if people don't know, Emma covers everything WSL, BBC. Just follow on Twitter. Honestly, some really, really good articles. Why do WSL, though? It's been a lively old season. We've had players wanting to move, being told they can't move to certain clubs, then moving to certain clubs. We seem to have had quite a few managerial changes, including Man City relieving a manager of his duty just 3 days before a cup final. And then there's this latest talk of tweaks or enhancements to women's football, what we're going to do. And one is potentially looking at doing away with relegation. So it's been quite a broad and interesting WSL season.
Interesting is one word, yeah. I mean, look, Neil sort of alluded to it there. There's going to be a lot of changes in the WSL going forward. The reasoning behind it is purely positive. They're trying to capitalise on, commercial revenue opportunities that are available now. Obviously, growth in terms of broadcasting deals, etc. But let's not kid ourselves. There's a long way to go in women's football. There's a hell of a lot of work that needs doing. And I think the new company that's taking over the WSL, for fans who maybe aren't across it, it's a very, very complicated situation. But there's a new company who's coming in who are basically but they're wanting to start from scratch, and they're looking at every facet of the game. So everything from player pathway to, competition, quality of competition, to marketing revenue, to sponsorship deals, broadcast rights, every single thing they're looking at, with the overall aim essentially of making the WSL the best league in the world consistently in women's football. That's a really tough thing to do overnight. So there's going to be a lot of trial and error, I'd imagine. There's a lot of discussions that are taking place, and of course one of those proposals that they're working on, we believe, we have reported across several media outlets that, potentially temporarily scrapping WSL for a couple of seasons in order to allow expansion of the league is one of several options that could be put forward at the next shareholders meeting, which would be end of May, perhaps start of June, depending on the exact weekend date. So a lot could change. That could have a significant impact on Liverpool, both financially and also competitively. So as Neil rightfully alluded to before, in terms of the blueprint, everything that happens in terms of the league structure, the club has to react, but also be proactive. They need to decide what it is they want, what it is they want to prioritise, put their views forward, use their voices, and have a plan in place for whatever that might be, but also be in a position where they react to whatever is decided elsewhere in the league. There's going to be lots of decisions being made over the next couple of seasons. So the one thing we do know is that Liverpool, they absolutely can't stand still. Any club who stands still now will be left behind. That's the simple fact behind it, because the changes that are going to be made, across both the top 2 tiers of women's football, will essentially be to underpin investment in women's football. So clubs that aren't going to invest, and I don't just mean financially, I mean everywhere. Clubs that don't invest will be left behind. So Liverpool have to play ball, and they've got to get involved, and I'm sure they will. But how they do that, I think, as Neil said, is really important. There has to be a really strategic way of doing that. So sorry, that was quite a lot, but hopefully I've kind of summed up where I think, Liverpool need to be at this moment in time.
There's what's good for the long-term structures of the game. There's what's good for the sides who are in the tier below. We've got experience of seeing them and their setups and their commitments that I think maybe if you are Manchester City or Chelsea, you don't have. That's not to say that this is somewhere where Liverpool Football Club need to be a voice for those who might not have the voice here at the top table. But I wouldn't mind that if that was the case, if they wanted to sort of say what we need to do is not try to sort of hive this off. But ultimately, the direction of travel you suspect will end up suiting the bigger clubs who've got very strong existing Premier League clubs that back them. I don't think that should be the case. I don't think that that's necessarily good. I don't think that's a good learning for the women's game. But I do think that it is just simply your likeliest outcome from here. And so that's what I'm saying when I'm saying that this almost certainly can help Liverpool. But I think that there's an argument, because Liverpool are those clubs, are the ones who've most recently been back down in the Championship, that they should be able to sort of make the point that a women's game without Lewis, for instance, is not preferable. And that there has to be ways and means and arguments had around the way in which money and development, because development is the key thing, is going to be distributed. And there are ways to be imaginative within that. And also it's worth pointing out that different clubs just also do have different ambitions. There are clubs that exist first and foremost as community hubs. And I think that clubs, for me, I'd like to see the potential for clubs to sort of define what they are. Do they want to be a community hub? If so, is there therefore a different way and a different style of support around growth and development that we can do? And are the clubs that want to say, no, we want to try and play European football? And that's our aim. And so we want to be regulated differently, treated differently. This is how we're going to do, and this is what we're going to commit to in the meantime. But we also accept that having a community hub, to use Lewis as an example, somewhere in the south of England that can oversee, therefore, the growth of the girls' and women's game across that patch, as it were. But therefore, then they get a different type of money. They get some money from the FA, as well as some money from the way the WSL is structured, however it is with the team. But my point is, this is still a blank piece of paper. And anything that you can imagine, and I've just imagined one really quite limited thing there, anything that you can imagine could be argued for, because it is a blank piece of paper. The worst case scenario, I'd argue, at least in the medium term, even though it's probably in Liverpool's interests, is just to sort of skew it towards all the bigger clubs. And I think it's important that could be guarded against. But as I say, I'm not holding my breath on that one, because you can make the immediate term arguments. And also a lot of this comes back to how it is we would define success. Emma says wants to be the best women's league in the world. That's a really, really good and strong ambition. The Premier League is the best men's league in the world, but there are many people who regularly attend or support Premier League clubs who do not like the way the Premier League go about their business. So if that is the ambition, that's fine. But that ambition may well end up having byproducts that people might not like. And it would be better to say what the byproducts that people might not like could reasonably conceivably be up the front, so everyone's sort of bought in. If this is what you want, then this is what the outcome is. And you can say, that's what we want, that's fine, that's what we want. And insofar as there can be a collective we're up for that. But then these are byproducts. Because then if you can say these are what the byproducts are, you can say, all right, well, which of these can we ameliorate a little bit? Where can we just sort of make that work a little bit better? And I think that's why this is an opportunity. whether or not it's taken as an opportunity, as I say, I am just a little bit sceptical, because it's very easy to like the sentence, we want to be the best women's league in the world, and then close your ears to everything else.
Very much so. So Liverpool are playing on Friday. We have Man United at Anfield. Second Anfield game of the season. I'll be there. Emma will no doubt be there for the BBC, and I think it's live on Sky or BBC.
Put me on the spot there. I haven't got a clue. I've not looked that far yet. That's 2 days ago.
Come on, Chris.
It's on telly. It's on the telly. It's all we need to know.
It's on the telly. Yeah, I think it's a Sky game.
Sky game. Which, jokes aside, that's the one thing I would say this season I think has been a big improvement for the women's game is it's a lot easier to access the games. If it's not on BBC or Sky, it's on YouTube.
It's on the BBC. It's on iPlayer and BBC Three.
Even better.
That's exactly what I meant to say.
Right, as the BBC's correspondent for women's football.
I should know that, which is why I was like, why have you put me on the spot? Yes, it is on the BBC.
No, your point's absolutely right, Chris. That it is easier, it is better, and that's what I've done. Most of my viewing of Liverpool women this season has been through that. To be honest, and I've enjoyed it. We're away. I think we'll be either in the air or landed when this game's getting played. It's a real shame because I think it'll be a bit of an event at Anfield on Friday night. I'm hoping that people are going to enjoy it and put their backs into it. So it is a little bit of a shame. I think that everyone needs to be prepared for the fact that it's a really good Manchester United team who don't give very many chances.
They're in really good form at the moment. Yeah, second in the league. Obviously, they're looking like they're going to be consolidating their position in the top three to get Champions League football for next season. So they're still in the FA Cup. They've got a lot to play for.
They've done the flip of last year, which is they finished a disappointing 5th, but this year have gone, we're not having that again. And you've just seen them now. They've gone back to being the machine they probably were 2 years ago when they just missed out on the title to Chelsea. So, and Chelsea are what they are. They're just a machine that keeps going. But I look forward to it. I'm just looking. It'd be nice to get a win, but let's not kid ourselves. This is a very good Man United side. It's just nice to see a good performance at Anfield because we sometimes I think the big atmosphere has probably sometimes overawed Liverpool and has actually helped the opposition because I think actually it brings the opposition up a level because it's playing in an iconic stadium like when we've got wins at the Emirates because playing in Arsenal it brings you up a level it just brings that sort of feeling in you it does to me when you're a fan because it's just exciting to be in those sort of stadiums. So but look forward to it. Hopefully we'll just see Olivia Smith dribble through everyone and score a hat-trick. That'll be all right, wouldn't it, Emma?
Yeah, I mean, I'm intrigued because you're right in terms of we haven't played well at Anfield, but I would argue the first game at Anfield in WSL that wasn't against Everton, so the game against Manchester City, for an hour, Liverpool were the better team. Olivia Smith tore them apart. Bunny Shaw didn't do anything. And it was when Olivia Smith came off and inevitably, Liverpool's squad depth wasn't there and City's was, and they ended up getting the win. But I would argue Liverpool performed, quite well in that game, considering, let's again be honest, the gap between the two teams is still quite considerable. So I'm quite optimistic while also being completely, real that Manchester United are absolutely heavy favourites for that game and they should be winning that game. But I'm optimistic that Liverpool can put on a performance that will make those at Anfield want to come back and see them again because it's just not against Everton. That's why I'm optimistic.
I'm into that. I think the other thing is they get what happens in that game, going back to that one against Manchester City, is they could just do with getting another 10 minutes in the lead.
Yeah.
Because then City begin to panic. It becomes a slightly different game. I think all the way through, my frustration, even with the games against Everton, where, listen, for vast expanses of them, Liverpool have been absolutely unmitigated rubbish.
Dire.
But in all of them that I've seen, there's often a really good first 10 from Liverpool and the goal just doesn't come and they have hard lines. And I think that then sets the tone. The game then becomes a different game and Liverpool begin to get a bit in their own heads and like, oh God, this is happening to us again. They weren't ahead for 15 minutes on the pitch in the game against Manchester City. They didn't get to the 15-minute mark. So the first thing is, could they just score first, please? And then from there, if they can open the scoring, can they survive half an hour after then? And allow the game to move through another couple of stages and have the opposition begin to worry. And then maybe Liverpool women will start to say, I tell you what, it's a bit of fun playing at Anfield. It's nice this. They're behind us, the crowd. And because that's what they've never had. And they've not had that when they've started really well. And I think that's psychologically, I think that's a bit of a barrier to overcome. You know, it would be great with the new manager if these women could experience a win at Anfield. It would feel like a real fresh start. It'd feel like taking off tight shoes for everyone. I'd be gutted not to be there. You know, it would really feel like if it starts with the new manager in a third match in charge, especially if, as Emma sort of feels, she's likely to be strongly in the running to be the new manager, full stop. If Liverpool could start to make Anfield a place that they looked forward to and enjoyed playing in, that would be a really good thing.
Yeah, and I should rewind earlier when I said Chelsea was the biggest game of the season. Now I take it back. Man United at home at Anfield on Friday. It's the biggest game of the season now.
Yeah, it's the best way to look at it.
Until the cup final.
Until the cup final, yeah, that's it. Yeah, all three will sat there at the cup final. Great fun. So before we go, Emma, obviously people should by now know, but where can people find you and anything exciting you're working on at the moment? I mean, it feels like you have a fantastic article every week at the moment with what's going on with WSL.
Well, that's very kind. Thank you. Yeah, obviously the BBC Sport website, click on the Women's Football Index and most of the stuff on there will just be my work. So you might love it, you might hate it, but it's all on there. I do have Twitter, I do have Blue Sky, hate both of them. I also have TikTok, also hate that, but I'm on there. So
good TikTok.
What are you doing on TikTok, Em?
Oh, it's terrible, Neil, but yeah, I do have it. Yeah.
What are you doing? Can you send me an example of your TikTok off air later on?
Well, you know what? It actually, I tried to provide a bit of insight of what it's like for me on a match day as a journalist. So hopefully there is something a little bit different there. So there's a bit of press conference room. There's a little bit of interaction with some of the players.
A
lot of mascot stuff.
A lot of what?
A lot of mascots.
Oh, there you are.
So be a TikTok of you and Mighty Red then on Friday.
Oh, you know what? Like you joke, but that's basically where I'm going. Yeah. I mean, I got Gunnosaurus playing with a dog at the Emirates the other week, and it's the highlight of my season. Honestly, it's
It'll have done some numbers as well.
Oh, serious numbers. I mean, Aitana Bonmati, the Ballon d'Or winner, walking into Man City, did absolutely, nothing compared to Gunnosaurus and the dog at the Emirates. But anyway, enough about my terrible TikToks.
It's the concept people want, Emma.
Yeah. No, it's a League Cup final this weekend between Manchester City and Chelsea. So there'll be lots of content around that this weekend. And hopefully next year, Liverpool will be in the conversation, eh? That would be good.
Yeah. And Neil, you're jetting off to Australia for one of your shows. And
we'll
still get your book, Transporter.
Yes. We're in Australia. That'll be really good fun. If anyone wants to buy Transformer, that's great. But that's up to them at this point. And then we'll be back the other side of the international break to cover the running of all seasons that are going. So it'll all be excellent.
And Liverpool in the FA Cup final.
And Liverpool in the FA Cup. That's the key part.
Key part, yeah. That's the one we all want. So cool. So before we go then, subscribe. Don't forget, 18th of March is the cutover date when we move over to Patreon. So all of your membership stuff will all be on Patreon then. This will still be on YouTube. You'll still get the women's stuff for free as well. But listen, give it a try. 1 week's trial. I'm pretty certain if you try it for a week, you'll enjoy it. And I might even get Emma and Neil to come back on again. So there you go. More of a reason to come watch it. But listen, thanks, Emma. Thanks, Neil. Always a pleasure to have you guys on the show. And I'll speak to you all very, very soon.
Take care.